Welcome to the Big Read Dearborn 2018 wrap-up. Now I'm very excited to introduce Jeff Karoub. Jeff is a Dearborn native. He is an Associated Press writer based in Detroit, covering race and ethnicity, business, politics, and entertainment. And in his spare time, he's a singer-songwriter. So please give Jeff a rousing welcome.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Henry. Thanks to my wife, who's providing the visual portion of today's audio-visual presentation. I think the fact that we're talking about thanks today is appropriate because I have a lot of people to thank for my family story, starting with the grandfathers and grandmothers that I'll be talking about, but also my parents who are here today, Carl and Deanna Karoub. Grateful to have them here. So I'm happy to talk about what's in a name, what's in my name, what's behind my name, and I'm going to get to some of that in a little bit here. If you came for the international desserts, that's okay. I think I did. I think that was my primary reason for being here. But I want to kick off with a song. I'm going to be doing some original songs today that either directly or indirectly relate to my family's migration story or migration stories in general. This song is starts autobiographically. It starts with the line, I was born in the shadow of a great big tire. Who among us was born in the shadow of a great big tire? We got some Beaumont/Oakwood people out there. Okay, the reason I want to kick off with this is because I think it's important. It's a story about our area. It's a story about Dearborn. It's a story about Detroit. It's a story about the big changes that it has gone through and the fact that we're still here, or maybe we came during one of the big changes. But I also think it's a song about the importance of documenting our family stories and our community stories and also sharing them, because it's amazing how quickly stories can be forgotten. This song is called Great Big Tire. I was born in the shadow of a great big tire. They say in another life it was a Ferris wheel. And either way, it rides on. Either way, we ride on. One day this town was a dynamo, put the world on wheels. Some stick around for the after show, whatever it reveals. Anyway, it rolls on. Anyway, it rolls on. Take a picture, 'cause everything will change. Set the scene, embrace the frame. Feel the beat from your fingertips to your heart. With this groove running through, rhythm starts. We will sing a new song. We rise up and on. Take a picture, 'cause everything will change. Set the scene, embrace the frame. Oh, and I said, oh, 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 oh. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Okay, so now I'm going to go back a century, actually a century and some change, to the early days of my grandparents and really my family in Detroit and Dearborn, the surrounding area. I have another song called Made by Motown, which is the name of today's show. The first line of that song is, one grandfather came downstate, the other across the sea. Both took a shot at achieving their dreams by assembling Model Ts. Well, I've taken some poetic license there. They didn't both assemble Model Ts, but they both went to work for Ford, as I gather either a lot of us do or a lot of our relatives and friends do. I like to say, actually my wife helped me with this phrase, that Ford was an exporter of cars but an importer of people. And I'm a proud recipient of that importation, if you will. So yeah, it's a mostly true song. I did take some poetic license, but what is true in that song, which I'll play for you in a little while, is two people from different worlds had a common goal, and they wanted to make a better life for themselves and their families and build a foundation. And Dearborn plays a very central role in the foundation of my family. So I've got these two grandfathers. There's the German, Norwegian, American, Sidney Feldhake, or Feldhake as they say up north, and the Arab, soon-to-be American, Jeff Karoub. So I'm going to be playing some songs, as I've already done. I'm going to be sharing some of my family's story. But I also think it's important that even though these are personal stories, I hope there's some universality in them today. I hope that I'm touching something in you, and I'm looking forward to hearing the stories that continue after I'm done and after we've all had a chance to take a little intermission. The next song I want to do is a song it's about taking a trip. Now, I don't mean a summer vacation, really. I mean the big trip, when you leave everything you know and have behind because you either have to or you just feel compelled to. There's just great need for you to go somewhere where your language may not be the language spoken and the people don't quite look like you. And your name maybe can't even be pronounced very well because the letters don't line up. I did start writing this song going to Finland with my wife a few years ago, but it really isn't a what I did on my trip to Finland song. This is really a song about when people need to take a much bigger trip and uproot their lives for something different. This song is called Home. I'm over the water now. The lights take their final bows. There's no turning back. even if I knew how. I'm leaving familiar for fear, and giving up all I hold dear. I know I must go, even when nothing is clear. The farther I go, the closer I am to home. Said home, 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 home. The land doesn't look the same, and no one can say my name. But the water I know, it's the same that will flow me back home. Yeah, the water I know, it's the same that will flow me back home. The farther I go, the closer I am to home. Said home, 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 home. Thank you. It's my 19th century teleprompter. Maybe Ford could have improved on this. You know, Bruce Springsteen has like 6 or 8 teleprompters when he does Bruce Springsteen on Broadway. So unless you guys paid $800, I don't want to hear any complaints about me doing this. I'm going to start with the story of my paternal grandfather, Hussein. He was born in 1892 or 1893, nobody really knows for sure, in what's now Lebanon. He came to the United States in 1912. He didn't come to Michigan to start. He went to Danbury, Connecticut to make hats. They were a big hat-making town. We don't know exactly when he came in 1912. We just know it was sometime that year. So it's one of the many mysteries that we have, one of the many holes we have in the family story. But in holes, sometimes, other stories take root, myths, if you will. And in my case, in my family's case, there was a little myth that filled this hole. My cousin Carl likes to tell people that our grandfather, Hussein, was on a ship in the North Atlantic at the same time as the Titanic. And his ship received the distress signal from the Titanic, but they were too far away to help. But they heard this. They heard this distress call as if it was like, broadcast through the entire ship all the way down into steerage. So this story is probably not true, this Titanic tale. But what we do know is he did arrive. He did make hats in Danbury, Connecticut for a couple of years. But then in 1914 came the $5 a day call from old Hank in Dearborn. Henry Ford said, all right, it's going to be $5 a day. It was pretty good money back then. So he came along with perhaps forebears of people in this room, heard that call and came to work. So around 1914, 1915, he comes, leaves again in the latter part of the decade to get married, has a son, and then comes back in 1920. We do have the record of his arrival at Ellis Island in 1920. So we don't have the official record of his arrival, at least we haven't found it, for 1912. But he began his life with his new wife, Maryam, Mary in English, and his firstborn son, Ali or Alex. So let's talk about 1916 for a minute. And let me go back to my cousin Carl, who doesn't just tell tall tales. He does some research on behalf of the family. He found some great video, and I'm going to share that video with you right now. Again, it's not 100% lock here, but there is at least a reasonable evidence that he found my grandfather in some archival video from the Ford plant in Highland Park on Manchester. This was an important day because Henry Ford had lured President Woodrow Wilson, Governor Woodbridge Ferris, well, I don't know if his first name was Woodbridge, Governor Ferris, let's say, and Thomas Edison to the Ford plant. And so he wanted all of his workers to come out and march proudly to the chiefs as they were, the chiefs of government and the chiefs of industry. So let's see here. Shall we watch a little bit of a video? Oh, and there's a little loud noise, a little boom at the beginning, so don't jump in your seat. Okay, it will pass and all will be good.
When there's a shine on your shoes, there's a melody in your heart, with a singable happy feeling, a wonderful way to start to face the world every day, with the dee-da-dum-dee-di-di, little melody that is making the worrying world go by. When you walk down the street with the happy-go-lucky beat, you'll find a lot in what I'm repeating. When there's a shine on your shoes, there's a melody in your heart. What a wonderful way to start the day. Now there's a shine that you get in the barber shop. There's a shine that you get in the Pullman car. There's a shine that you get in the pool room. There's the shine that you get in the schoolroom. But it doesn't matter where you get it, it'll do a lot of good if you let it. A little bit of polish will abolish what's bothering you. When there's a shine on your shoes, melody in your heart, singable, happy feeling, wonderful.
Well, of course it's not positive, but we're reasonably sure that if that wasn't him, he was in that crowd somewhere on that day. But you know, just as I've talked about some of the holes in the family story, we weren't alone. I mean, this was during the Great Migration, 1880 to 1920. There's a crush of people coming to this country from all over the world. And this was before the National Archives was even established. And with all those people, you can imagine that a lot of records were lost, or a person's name was misspelled, and therefore, unless you know how to search for it, you're not finding the evidence. This was true for a lot of people. It was especially true for people coming from the Arab world, where names were a little more difficult for the people at Ellis Island and other ports of entry to get quite right. That's why they got changed sometimes also. So I like this quote. There's an author, her name is Lila Saloom Elias. And she said that, and I'm going to jump back a little bit to the Titanic story too. If somebody left the old country, say like my grandfather in 1912, and they left for America, and then they never established contact again with the homeland, it was just assumed that they were on the Titanic. That was just the answer, right? Well, they're on the Titanic, what can I say? So, I guess I was thinking about some of those people, maybe some of those moms in particular, who didn't hear again from family. Now, my great-grandmother did hear from my grandfather, so this is not an indictment on him at all. But I think about when people do go on to try and make a new life, and I thought about the people who are left behind. This song is called Find a Shore. Sail the sea, find a shore. I tried to give you more. Go be free, find what's yours. Why can't I close the door? Ocean deep, mountain high, now it's goodbye. Ocean deep, mountain high, now it's goodbye. Thank you very much. That was Find a Shore. All right, so Sidney Feldhack, this is my mother's father. 3 years before Hussein Karoub came to the United States, my maternal grandfather was born in rural northern Michigan, a little town called Norwalk. And this would be Manistee County, for those who know the area. I know a couple people in the room do. There's a rock out there, it says Feldhack Park on it. You know about that one, don't you? In Onekama. Anyway, he was born to August and Anna Feldhack, and they were the children of Norwegian and German immigrants. And we do have the paperwork to back that up. He grew up in a farming community. And he came of age, he became an adult right smack dab at the beginning of the Great Depression. And as you all have ancestors who found that a very difficult time, so did he. He went to work on the Great Lakes freighters for a time. I don't know exactly how long, but he took some great pictures while he was out there of what he saw. He married Ella Swain from Bear Lake, not too far down the road, in 1932. And shortly thereafter, they too came downstate to come work for Ford. And then that was around 1935, I think, and that was where he was for a good long time. It's fortunate that my grandfathers did have jobs in the Great Depression because so many didn't. But it didn't mean that Ford and other manufacturers and employers weren't cutting workers and cutting pay. So it was a struggle for everybody during that time. On my father's side, my father's father, he also was working for Ford in Highland Park at that time. But it was a tough time for the family. He lost his wife and 2 children to illness in the 1930s. But still, hope somehow remained in my family, and I gather a lot of your families, that somehow there was still hope for better times to come. And we went through a Great Recession, not quite as bad as the Great Depression, but a Great Recession nonetheless. And I thought of my grandfathers and their young families, and this great city next door, bankruptcy, the largest municipal bankruptcy at the time. And I was thinking about people who were struggling then, people who were struggling. Many had to leave, some stayed. And you couldn't fault anyone for whatever action they needed to take. But I guess that made me start thinking about what we owe the place where we live and what that place owes us. And sometimes you have to wrestle with the decision of breaking up with the place that you live and love. The song I wrote is called Fading Grace. Turn your back, saying it's not you, it's me. We want different things, it's true. A new view, turn the clock back seconds before you walk through the door, shut so silently, no more. Don't let the coming winter get you down. There's still some life left in this gritty town. La 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 la. La 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 la. So I go, the wind in my face. Give me this day my bread, my fading grace. With nothing left, I might leave myself. Well, something pulls me back in place. Don't let the coming winter get you down. There's still some life left in this gritty town. Don't let the coming winter get you down. There's still some life left in this gritty town. La 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 la. 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 Thank you very much. So Sid and Ella Feldhack's arrival was around the same time that Hussein Karoub was asked to lead a new mosque. And if I haven't mentioned it already, he was an imam or a prayer leader. This was one that still stands today. It looks a little bit different. It's a lot larger, but it's called the Dick's Mosque, the Dearborn Mosque, Masjid Dearborn, the American Muslim Society. If I left out any names that mosque goes by, that's about it. Yeah. But this wasn't his first rodeo, if you will. It wasn't the first mosque that he led. There was a mosque about a decade earlier in Highland Park, and historians say this was the first freestanding mosque built for the purpose of Islamic worship. This was in the early 1920s, perhaps 1923? 1923, ding, 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 I got it right. So this is an article from the Detroit Free Press, and it's a little fuzzy, a little faded there, but what you see is my grandfather. This is a technique that we journalists really wouldn't use today, just blow up the face and put a circle around it in the middle of a picture. I don't want to, criticize the Free Press, fine paper and all, but so in this close-up, you see him working. He's laboring to help build the mosque that he would ultimately lead. And what makes this even more compelling, I think, is that this was during the fasting month, okay, during Ramadan. And it was hot, as it often is when Ramadan falls during the summer months. But he ate nothing, he drank nothing, and went about his work because this was his work and that was his faith, and he wasn't going to let either get in the way of what needed to be done. So jumping back ahead to the 1930s, all this while, the population is growing. Not as much as it grew during the Great Migration. There were restrictions placed on immigration in the 1920s. But families were growing, communities were growing, the culture was growing up around it. And this is a lot earlier, I think, than a lot of people know of the thriving community that was in places like Dearborn and Highland Park at that time. So as this demand grew for religious and cultural and business and retail services, so too did the call for a mosque in Dearborn. This is the oldest still operating mosque in Michigan, and it's indeed one of the largest. I don't know if it's the largest, but it's one of the largest. And at this time, the people who worshiped there, the members of the mosque, wanted my grandfather to come live in Dearborn. And so he did. He moved into an upper flat, 2796 Holly was the house number. I looked on Google Maps, and it looks like there's an empty lot right there. So I can't show you a picture of that house. But an upper flat with 7 people. My father was one of those people. He can tell you the quarters were probably pretty cramped in that house. They were only there for about a year or so. My grandmother wanted to move back to Highland Park. Pollution was quite a problem then in the South End. I know that the South End still deals with pollution, but it was especially bad then. Yeah, right. And she'd see the soot on the wind, on the curtains, and on the cars. Highland Park they went. It's sort of hard for us in 2018 to think about Highland Park as a beautiful place, but it was. It was the city of trees. And it was a great place then before it suffered from population loss and disinvestment and all kinds of things. So across town, on the west side, let's go back to Sid and Ella. They are around this time moving into the first home they owned at 1440 May Street. Oh, did I get ahead of you there? Let's talk about this one for a minute. I did forget to talk about this one. And this is important because it goes back to what I said. See, I planned this. This was not a mistake. I planned this. I wanted to get your attention. When I talk about the growing demand for services and products for the Arab and Muslim and Arab Christian communities, they wanted to know what was going on in their communities, in their growing communities. And newspapers and magazines were all of a sudden popping up. And my grandfather, in the 1930s, started a magazine called Al Hayat, which translates to The Life. And then a short time later, I don't know exactly what year, this became the American Arab Message, a newspaper. So I, as a guy who's been in the newspaper/news business for 26 years, I take some great pride in that, in knowing that he was the publisher of a newspaper. We have a newspaper publisher in the room right now, serving part of the Arab community. So it's as important a job today to provide news to people as it was then, and I hope always will be. Did I get that right? Okay. So back to the west side. Sid and Ella Feldhack were moving into a home at 1440 May Street. There it is. And this was a small house, couple bedrooms, on the west side, not too far from here really, but in the sort of Michigan and Mason and Monroe area. And this house was just down the street from what we now call Good Shepherd United Methodist Church, but what then was the Evangelical United Brethren Church. That's a mouthful. But they merged with the Methodists in 1968, and now they're a United Methodist Church. And the EUB, as it was called, the EUB Church, is where my grandfathers attended and my mother attended church. And then a couple blocks the other way was the International Order of Odd Fellows Lodge. I always smile when I think about that, but that's a great name, isn't it? So this is the lodge that my grandfather attended. My grandmother attended the Rebecca Auxiliary. And this was the lodge that he would eventually lead as Grand Master for the entire state. This was a couple decades later, but he would serve the entire state as a Grand Master of the IOOF. Okay, so now we are again jumping ahead to the 1960s. Parallel lives. We probably have them in all of our families. We know of people in our families that were close together but never met. So Hussein Karoub and Sidney Feldhack, as far as we know, didn't meet until the early 1960s. And this would be at, I'm guessing before, but certainly at that occasion, the wedding of my parents, Carl and Deanna Karoub. And I believe this picture was taken at the Dearborn Inn, was it not? Yes. So the worlds come together, the worlds collide, the families collide, never to be the same again. At this point, my grandfathers obviously had grown children. My father was the youngest, and he was north of 30 at that point. So we have in this family, in this growing but still relatively young family of 55 years ago, we have a soon-to-be lawmaker, we have teachers, we have a minister, Hussein's son, the man we called Ummo Mike or Mohammed, would work alongside him and ultimately carry on his ministry. We have the journalists in both my grandfather and my uncle, as well as ministers. We have the musician, which I'll talk about in a minute. So my uncle, Sidney, followed my grandfather, Sidney, into the Ford plant, into a Ford plant. And my father, the youngest son of Hussein Karoub, became a musician. And he played in the Detroit Symphony, the Dearborn Symphony, many symphony orchestras across the country. And what tickles us is he was on a lot of the old Motown records, the ones that were recorded in the heyday of Motown, the classic era in the 1960s here in Detroit before they left for LA. Now, we think that it's only the old documents that are hard to come by. With Motown records, you know, I don't know what was going on, but sometimes it's hard to find just who played what on what song. But we do know this. We do know this. My father played on Ain't No Mountain High Enough by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell. And we certainly hope, because I've put it in a song and I don't want to be wrong, we think he's playing horn on I Heard It Through the Grapevine, Marvin Gaye's version. And maybe the other one, maybe Gladys Knight's version too. I'm not sure about that. But as I say, you know, records get lost. Myths start to be created. What can you do? So what I think as I start to wrap up here, I want to tell you that these are different people with different roots, but their branches converge in Dearborn, in Detroit. They converge right here in southeastern Michigan, as I'm sure a lot of your family trees did the same thing, or are doing the same thing right now. And I like to think that both Sidney and Hussein were both immigrants in a way, even though one didn't come from another country, because they both had to give up a different life and a different culture to make it here and to plant roots here. And as I wrote in the song Made by Motown, still the best thing they built was not by their hands, but the foundation for those yet to come. So what I want to do is I want to close with Made by Motown. And I greatly, greatly appreciate your patience and you being here. It's been a thrill to play some songs and tell you some stories. This one I'm going to call, I always call, Made by Motown. You clap before the song, that's always dangerous. Undo it, undo it. One grandfather came downstate, the other across the sea. Both took a shot at achieving their dreams by assembling Model Ts. 5,000 parts and $5 a day. It was tough yet enough to take home. Still the best thing they built was not by their hands, but the foundation for those yet to come. For better or worse, and we've seen much of both after a century. I'm still proud to say that they helped to make Motown. Motown helped to make me. My father found music his way out of the plants, with so many places to play. There was Olympia, an orchestra hall, and Motown's famed Studio A. He had midnight sessions and chart-topping sides, the horn that you hear on Grapevine, we think. From Marvin to Stevie, the Supremes and the Tops, it was one grooving assembly line. For better or worse, and we've seen much of both after a century. I'm still proud to say that they helped to make Motown. Motown helped to make me. I'm blessed to be writing and playing my songs, the product of hard work and kin. Well, sometimes I feel like the unlikely child of Henry Ford and Aretha Franklin, unlikely for better or worse. And we've seen much of both after a century. I'm still proud to say that they helped to make Motown. Motown helped to make me, for better or worse. And we've seen much of both after a century. I'm still proud to say that they helped to make Motown. Motown helped to make me. I'm still proud to say that they helped to make Motown. And Motown helped to make me. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so very much. It's been such a great honor.